The video recorder of my memory plays it every now and then. It plays those scenes following my heart attack and triple bypass. It was a time of difficult days and sleepless nights. I remember during that time, I was comforted by a metaphor. Metaphors can be helpful because they lie at the very core of human understanding, expressing an idea through the image of another object. The metaphor is one used by Paul in 1 Corinthians 16:9, which speaks of an open door is set before me. It helped me to focus on the open door that God's grace had set before me, the door of opportunity. Now, as I reflect on the subject of suffering, again I find the metaphor helpful. Some might suggest the metaphor of a furnace, a fire, or a flood. All or any of these could help convey understanding. However, in struggling with the dark passages of life for me, that which reaches deep into my mind and heart is the metaphor, the doorway of suffering. Why use the metaphor of a doorway to talk about suffering? It could be because the doorway of suffering is one we all enter, a universal door through which all pass. In part, modern media makes that painfully visible and unmistakably clear. Genocide in prime time, disturbing images of death by famine, heart-wrenching stories, poignant portraits, and the senseless agony of war. The horrific examples of living, breathing evil that show no regard for human life, resulting in unspeakable, unimaginable horrors experienced by helpless victims. Technicolored suffering that refuses to remain a media generalization because it gets personal and insistent when you or a loved one suffers personally. Then suffering raises heightened questions of life, meaning, reality, truth, and personhood. The hard truth is, it's unavoidable. It's part of the human condition, the cup of life from which we all must drink. As the scripture warns, think it not strange. In addition, the metaphor is relevant for the doorway of suffering is unmarked, the unexpected factor. Out of the blue, you turn a corner, get a phone call, hear words of diagnosis, and the sky caves in and the bottom falls out. I could also find the metaphor meaningful, for there are times the doorway of suffering seems like a revolving door, taking you from one pain to another in succeeding waves that offer no time to catch an emotional breath. The experience captured in the poetry of gospel music. I've been in the storm too long. All of these things could and should be said. However, the most essential thing is, although we have no choice about entering that doorway, we do have a choice about where the doorway of suffering can lead us. As we all know, and as some know only too well, the doorway of suffering can lead to disillusionment and cynicism, resignation and despair, a desolate canyon where our prayers rattle around in an empty echo. In 1937, the English poet W.H. Auden published a poem, Victor. In the poem, Victor is betrayed by his wife. And as the verse tells the painful story, Victor walked out into the high street. He walked to the edge of the town. He came to the allotments and the rubbish heap, and his tears came tumbling down. Victor looked up at the sunset as he stood there all alone, cried, "Are you in heaven, Father?" But the sky said, "Address not known." The doorway of suffering can lead us into what appears to be a dead-end place, where it seems our petitions for relief and deliverance come back unopened, unanswered, stamped, address not known. The impact moves us beyond reflex questions of why to agonizing questions of why me, compounded by, "Oh Lord, how long?" For the night seems to never end and the dawn to never come. The doorway of suffering can lead us there. Or, by our choice, it can lead us beyond a seeming dead end into another place, into a divine place of intimacy with God that not only acknowledges but affirms the providence of God, that will let God be God. For while explaining suffering has to do with ideas, enduring suffering has more to do with attitude, a faith-grounded attitude, informed by the God-given insight that suffering is not purposed, but is purposeful, not imposed by God, rather used by God for redemptive purposes, so that which could drive you from God can draw you closer. We should not be confused by the blessed hymn, "I come to the garden alone, and he walks with me and talks with me." Well, that's not just for the fragrant, flower-filled garden. It's also when I'm struggling up the rough side of the mountain. He is walking with me and talking with me, so that even under the unrelenting pressure of suffering, my suffering is shared by God. I am not alone. The pain and anxiety I can't describe, he shares and understands. I can endure not by summoning up some remarkable personal courage, but by resting in a divinely supporting presence and power. With that perspective, we can choose the place where suffering becomes a strength, where the focus moves beyond why to who. Who is in charge? As Don Baker points out, Job asks, why 16 times? In response to Job's 16 whys, there are 59 whos. Job didn't need to know why things happened as they did. He just needed to know who was in control. Moving from why did it happen to who is in charge. He needed, as do we, to let God be God. Knowing the existence of things we do not understand and cannot explain does not render God powerless to use it for his purpose and our good. That's demonstrated in what I call a suffering symphony. The lyrics to What a Friend We Have in Jesus were written by Joseph Scriven after his fiancée drowned. O Love That Will Not Let Me Go was written by George Matheson after his fiancée, discovering he was going blind, told him that she could not go through life with a blind man. And then these words written by Horatio Spafford in 1837 after his 4 daughters drowned in a collision at sea. When peace, like a river, attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. And to add to those the testimony of Benjamin Reaves. In the words of Andre Crouch, through it all, I learned to trust in Jesus. I learned to trust in God. Through it all, I learned to depend upon his word.